Hey there, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Creepy Fox Podcast. This is the show where we go ahead and relive and retell some of the creepy stories that subscribers like yourselves shared with me. And do we have a good episode for all of you to listen to today? From a scary and creepy call from a prison inmate to a group of burglars trying to break into your home, these stories are sure to give you the chills. Now, if you'd like to share a story for an upcoming stories video, you can send in your experience by using my user submissions email, tcfnarrations@gmail.com. You'll see it on the bottom right of the video throughout the episode. Anyways, friends, make sure to sit back, relax, grab yourself some snacks, and enjoy the stories. Out of all the countless hours I've spent listening to the Creepy Fox and other narrators, I've almost never heard of this kind of experience happening. After it took place, I looked up some articles and even some news reports, and I was shocked at how common of an occurrence this is. This is the kind of scary experience that leaves you at a loss of words and thinking, wow, what did I just listen to? I think the lack of help you can get to resolve this kind of thing is what makes it worse. You don't really get the justice that's deserved for people who apparently dedicate themselves to doing these sorts of actions. Now that I've spent a few moments hyping up my story and hopefully gotten your attention, I want to rewind to 2020, May. The lockdowns are in full effect, and everyone and their mothers are hunkered down in their homes, ordering takeout and going out for groceries and medications. I myself, being happily married and a father of 2 wonderful children, was blessed enough to be able to work from home in my office, pretty much spending every day, Monday through Friday, working on documents, as well as scheduling appointments for clientele. I remember this being a Thursday afternoon, because that was the day my wife was working 12 hours. She's a registered nurse and works at the local hospital, which, as you probably already guessed, was jam-packed with sick patients. As for my kids, they were over at my sister-in-law's house, and I'm just there munching on some Chex Mix and reading an email I received from one of my coworkers. Out of nowhere, I see the screen turn on my phone, and I notice a really long number. Now, I normally almost never answer calls from numbers I don't recognize, but for whatever reason, I decided to answer anyways, most likely because I was pretty bored and just wanted to get my mind off of work. As soon as I answered, palms and fingers still oily and salty from my crunchy snacks, I'm hit with a very aggressive voice. This is going to pretty much be what I remember the conversation going like, so the wording isn't going to be exact, but you get the idea. I answered, and I said,
"Hello? Who is this? Hey, do you speak Spanish?"
The voice on the other line said. I answered no, telling him I barely remembered the words I was taught in my high school Spanish class. And all of a sudden he starts yelling in Spanish. This is then followed by a lot of bad words and vulgarities in English. Then a line that made my heart drop.
"We have your wife. Do as we say, and I promise nothing will happen to her."
Then I heard a scream of a woman in the background, crying for help and yelling out things that were hard to understand. The man begins to speak again and tells me that if I weren't to wire him $10,000 in the next hour, I would never see my wife again. You can already imagine the scene. I'm shaking, heart racing like a race car in NASCAR, and I'm desperately trying to catch my breath.
"Please, no. Put her back on the line. Don't you dare do anything to my Marianne."
Obviously not her real name, just making one up for this story. Regardless, I made the foolish mistake of saying her name, and I begged and cried like I'd never done in my life, as he begins explaining the process of wiring money to him. And all the while I'm starting to think, my wife was at the hospital. How in the world could she have been taken by someone who's now demanding money? I don't know, but I foolishly grabbed my car keys, and I begin walking outside into the driveway. In that moment, my sister-in-law is pulling up with my kids, as she sees the look of panic and fear in my eyes. The man on the line asks me who I was talking to, and then goes further to say that if it was the police, that was it. In that moment, I put my phone on silent and tell my sister-in-law someone had taken my wife. She looks at me, and then she explains she had just spoken to her no less than 3 minutes ago to advise her the kiddos were being taken back to me. Still on mute, I tell my sister-in-law who is calling, and that's when she says, "She's fine. Hang up, and let's call the police." The man on the line is asking me why I wasn't speaking, and then begins to curse at me yet again. This is when I finally hung up, and immediately I phoned for my wife, who answered me on the second ring. Thank the Lord, she was okay, and she was on her break about to go back to work. I pretty much gave her a SparkNotes version on what had just occurred, and she manages to relax my nerves, my kids staring at me like I was some sort of madman. Long story short, I did phone the police, and I explained what had happened word per word, and the police officer I spoke to tells me that it was an extortion scam. She explained it was common, and that criminals in Mexican jails will bribe the security guards for cell phones, and then they'll dial random numbers until they successfully connect to someone. Then, using a recording of a woman screaming for help, they trick you into thinking they have one of your loved ones, finally demanding money. I couldn't believe it, but as I mentioned before, I looked this up online, in articles, videos on YouTube, and experiences that I read, and they were almost identical to mine. So that's pretty much the whole story. I never have received a phone call like that ever again, and I now have a filter set up on my phone which blocks international calls, as well as spam. Has anyone else listening to this had this sort of experience, or do you know someone that might have? It would be interesting to see if any of my fellow Creepy Fox listeners got a story to share. Howdy, Creepy Fox. Glad to hear you're doing better, and I heard you needed stories. Luckily, or well, unluckily, I guess, I would have a new encounter I'd love to share. So get your coffee and get ready, because this is a good one. Let's get into it. I went to my local Starbucks one evening to get a coffee, get some work done, and enjoy the overall atmosphere and smell of coffee. This became a little ritual of mine on Fridays after classes. So, as I was hanging out and enjoying the nice music and the smell of coffee, I heard a ruckus coming from the front of the building near the entrance. I'll admit, I was irritated because I was the only one in the cafe at the time, but whatever. Oh great, I thought to myself, as I saw a homeless man walk toward me. Hey, you, can I have some money? Now, I may have sounded rude in my response, but he was just overall rude when he asked for it. I replied, "Buddy, I'm not made of money. You can't go around being rude to people like that." Then he proceeded to walk away to the restrooms. 5 minutes later, I hear another ruckus coming from the back of the restrooms as the homeless man screams profanities at me and flips me off. A barista thankfully told this man that his nonsense would not be tolerated and that he had to leave. Finally, the smell of alcohol would leave my area. At least that's what I thought, because 20 minutes later I hear a loud bang come from the entrance as the man returns with another one of his homeless buddies, and they come in with bad intentions. They immediately start screaming and throwing things around, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. But then the man says to his friend, "This is the guy who was a jerk to me." Well, he didn't actually say that. I just want to keep things family friendly. Anyways, they proceed to charge at me, but thankfully an employee stopped them before they could hurt me. The authorities were called, and Dumb and Dumber, as I like to call them, were taken away. Not before the man screams, "I'm gonna find and kill you," in his drunken state. I view this experience more funny now that it's past, but it was very scary during that moment. I do plan to work at the Starbucks this winter, and hopefully I'll have some more stories to share in the future. So, stay safe everyone, and thanks for listening. Sometimes you just want to relax at home after a long and stressful day at work. You want to sit on your couch eating a pizza and drinking your favorite soda pop. But why is it when you're at your most vulnerable trying to watch your favorite TV show when it has to happen? This is an experience of mine I'm sharing here on the Creepy Fox, and it took place fairly recently. And there I am just as I went over. A light summer's rain is hitting my windows, and the AC is on full blast, when all of a sudden, I could hear someone yelling outside on my front porch. At first I thought it might have been my neighbors, but I remembered in that moment they had just left a few days ago, saying they were going on vacation. Okay, so who's the idiot yelling outside? I put on my sandals, get off my lazy boy, and make the quick 10-second walk to the front window. There I saw a dirty, disheveled homeless man wearing a poncho, knocking over my plants and banging on my front door. I, confused out of my mind, go to grab my pistol from my nightstand, and then after I return to open my front window ever so slightly. "Hey, knock it off. This is private property. You need to leave." He takes one look at me and then begins cursing, calling me all the names in the book, and saying that this was his house, and that I was the one that was trespassing. This goes on for another minute or so, until one of the neighbors across the street steps out of his house and starts to yell at this homeless man. I yelled back to my neighbor John, and John says he had already called the cops. The homeless man, hearing this news, doesn't seem to care, since he keeps banging on my door and throwing a temper tantrum. Now, no, before you begin to ask, I didn't take out my pistol, as that was reserved for if he actually got in. After another few minutes, the homeless man gives up and starts to head out of my view. Cops arrived moments later, and John points the officers in the direction of the homeless man. I myself take this opportunity to step out onto my front lawn and watched as the cops start to ask the homeless man to wait. He turns around, and then the homeless man begins yelling at the officers. After about 20 or so seconds and more arguing and yelling, a taser is taken out, more directions are given, but the man is quickly apprehended and arrested. What officers found the man carrying made this whole thing that much more scarier and intense. A knife. What he was doing with it, most likely not going out into the wild and surviving like Bear Grylls. Oh, and by the way, the guy was on drugs. What kind? Not too sure, to be honest, as I never asked for that clarification. But either way, one of the more scarier and bizarre experiences I've had, this coming from someone who lives in a pretty quiet and safe neighborhood. This is an older experience of mine I wanted to share that happened when I was married to my ex-wife. It was late November 2011. It's freezing outside with snow, and my ex-wife Julia and I are in our bed watching late-night television and keeping warm and comfortable with our heater and blankets. At about, I want to say, 1 in the morning, we are awoken by knocks at the front door. Now, we live in a pretty quiet middle American suburb, and the only reason someone would be knocking at this hour would be if something might have happened to the elderly couple. I bring this up because it had happened before. We ignore the knocking, but after enough persistence, I decide to head on over to check and see what could be the cause of the disturbance. So I look through the peephole. That's when I notice a figure dressed in all black, with a hoodie that's covering their face. And to top it off, they're holding onto a large knife. I remember taking a step back and thinking, well, it's not Halloween anymore, and that knife sure doesn't look like a prop or something made out of plastic. Regardless, I muster up the most intimidating voice I could come up with, and I tell the person at the door they need to leave, and that cops were already on the way. "Please, open the door. I need help. I was being chased by a man with a gun. Please help." The voice was very weird. It sounded like a man trying to imitate the voice of a woman, or at least what sounded like one who might have had too many cigarettes. I once again yell that cops are on the way, and as I'm about to reach for my phone, because mind you, I have yet to do what I actually said, I hear my wife screaming at the top of her lungs. I reluctantly retreated from the door, and I sprint my way to my wife in our room, who's now got a hold of our shotgun that we keep under the bed. "What's wrong, honey? What's happening?" Then I hear scratching and the sounds of someone trying to open our bedroom window. "Call the cops and give me the shotgun," I tell my wife with nerves of steel. At the window was a sight for sore eyes. There are 2 men in ski masks trying to pry open the window, already successfully cutting the screen. I wasted 0 time raising up my shotgun and with the look of a lion on the hunt, I tell these guys to get lost. You should have seen them running off in the snow. One of them actually fell over and slipped on their bum. I laugh at it now, as it was sort of revenge for scaring my wife and I. Long story short, cops did arrive, and after doing a full search and investigation of the neighborhood, they were unable to locate the would-be intruders. The only evidence they found were footprints in the snow and tire tracks, where said footprints met said tire tracks. Fast forward about a month later, and a trio of home burglars were caught and arrested trying to break into a home. It was the same story. Someone at the door claiming to be in need of help, while the accomplices made their way through a back door. Luckily, the homeowner was unharmed, and the burglars were caught a short while after. Justice served, with a win for the good guys. Last January, before the world went completely bonkers, an old friend of mine came back to my hometown to visit her family. Emily, my friend, had advised me a week before, and I was super excited that we would be hanging out once again like the good old days. I don't know if you care for context, but I'm female, and I was 24 years old when this creepy encounter took place. Anyways, on the third day of her arrival back, we hung out the entire day. We were at the mall, went to the beach for a bit, and then finally in the evening, we went back to my house to watch some movies and gossip. Close to 8 p.m., Emily came up with the idea of going to get some ice cream and then heading to the little park we always used to hang out at to watch the sunset and relax. Sounded fun. We had to Baskin-Robbins to get both our favorite, strawberry ice cream, and then we drove to said park to relax. Now, we both love Pokemon Go, so wouldn't you know we were there excited to learn that there were 2 Pokestops and even a gym that we could play. Fast forward about 20 or so minutes and we're there catching Pokemon, minding our own business, when we couldn't help but notice the sounds of footsteps and shuffling behind us. Bear in mind, the sun had just set, and the park lights had now come on. As we turned back and looked, we noticed a man in a trench coat staring at us, with one of the weirdest looks I'd ever seen a person make. It did make us uncomfortable, and it didn't help that he took a seat next to us and started asking what we were doing. Nervously, we told him we were just playing Pokemon Go and that we were actually just on our way. Suddenly, the man puts his arm over my shoulder and starts laughing and saying how we were best friends and that he was so excited to see me. Emily was confused, and so was I. I had never met this guy before in my life, and the harsh smell of alcohol in his breath pretty much told me the whole story. "Yeah, great to see you too," I nervously chuckle and laugh as I try to pull away. He ends up grabbing my arm, and then he puts me back on the bench. "Where are you going? We have so much catching up to do." I'm beginning to freak out, and Emily is telling the man to let go of me, but he shuts her down, and then once again focuses his attention back to me. In that moment, fight or flight kicks in, and I choose fight. I ended up punching him straight in the family jewels, and he quickly lets go of me, which gave me the perfect opportunity to get away. What he does in the next moments was even more chilling. He reaches into his trench coat and takes out his switchblade, not before calling me and Emily names I'd rather not repeat here. We booked it, running across the street, where luckily we saw a group of college students our age who were walking one of their dogs. The dog started to bark, and we take this as a sign of relief to quickly point behind us toward the man in the trench coat. We saw him staring at us from the park, and he's got the look of defeat over his face. Well, let's just say the group didn't have to really guess what it was we were running from, as they usher us into one of the convenience stores, and we called the cops. I'm not sure if they ever caught the guy or not, as neither Emily or I ever heard anything else. Yeah, talk about creepy. That was the time we went to play Pokemon Go, and we got chased by a maniac with a knife who thought I was his long-lost best friend. I've been trying my best to figure out what exactly it is I might have done wrong, or what could have possibly have set up this series of events. But as I recount my creepy encounter, I just can't come up with a straight answer. What drives someone to just go absolutely mad and turn what should be a nice evening of yours of shopping into a nightmare you'll soon never forget? Let's head back to September of 2020, shall we? I was in dire need of some new running shorts, and I had been holding back on purchasing a pair for quite a while. So one evening after work, I head to my local REI sporting store to grab myself my shorts and even stock up on some protein bars. Just as soon as I entered the store and was greeted by one of the workers, I noticed a man who didn't quite seem to fit with everyone else. I'm not trying to sound mean here, it's just that he was very poorly dressed. His shoes and pants had holes in them, and you could see patches of dirt and filth on his shirt, and his hair was all nappy and messy. I ignored him as I head over to the clothing section, and while I'm there browsing and minding my own business, I noticed that man staring at me from behind one of the aisles. This awkward staring went on for about a solid minute, and just when I was about to say something, he started yelling at me. "You're speaking too loud, and you're being a huge bother to me." I'm there dang confused as I wasn't even talking to anyone. Sure, I was texting my brother to see if he might have needed anything, since I'm already here, but what sort of talking was he going on about? I proceed to ignore him yet again, and that's when I start to walk to another section of the store. He follows me, and then proceeds to grab the shorts I was holding on to, before throwing them straight to the floor. "I was talking to you. I said you're making too much noise." At this point, I got the huge whiff of alcohol over his breath, and this is when I started to fear that he might be off his rocker, so to speak. I was scared that he might try to attack me had I said or done the wrong movement. Either way, I politely tell him I was sorry for any inconvenience I may have caused him, which I'm not even sure why I should have apologized, but luckily it shuts him up for a couple of minutes as I grab my shorts and then had to speak to a worker. The one worker I spoke to didn't really seem to care, as they just said to ignore him and go about my shopping. So much for caring about the well-being and safety of your customers. Anyways, I picked up some protein bars and then head to the cashier to pay and hope I can forget about Mr. Creepy Dude, but he stood there at the end of the line, staring at me as if I was some sort of piece of meat. "Hey, do you see that guy at the end of the line just looking over at us?" I told the cashier with a nervous tone. "Yeah, do you know him?" She responds back. "No, I don't. He's just been following me around and giving me a hard time." She proceeds to say it was the first time she had ever seen him, but had noticed he entered the store a little while ago and was acting kinda weird. Once I was done paying, I asked her if an employee could mind walking me toward my vehicle, and she said she'd get someone in for me to wait for her. That was the longest 20 seconds of waiting in my life, because Creepy Dude comes up to me for one final time and starts to curse me out and say I was ruining his evening and that I should never come to the store again. Luckily, some customers came to the rescue, but that's not before Creepy Man blows a gasket and starts going off on the customers too, saying he was going to, and I quote, "kill them." That was super scary, especially in the way in which he said it, and I still have recurring nightmares in which I see that man. At any rate, I did get some help getting to my vehicle, and I was able to make it back home in one piece. Fast forward a few days later, and I was returning my shorts after not really liking the fit of them. Reluctantly, of course, since I was scared I'd see the creeper. Therefore, I brought my older brother with me. And while I'm making my return, the female cashier I spoke to on the night of the incident sees me and says hello. I ended up asking her if she remembered the weird guy from the other week, and she mentioned that they called the cops on him, and they ended up taking him away, but not before a scuffle had occurred. So that was pretty much it. Not too sure what was up with that guy, but judging by the whiff of alcohol I got from his breath, he wasn't really all there. I haven't had any other creepy or scary things happen to me, but if I do, you best believe I'd love to share them and hear them on the Creepy Fox podcast. This is by far the scariest thing that has ever happened to me, and whenever I look back on it, I wonder what would have happened had a friend of mine not shown up in time. Honestly, I really hope no one ever has to go through something like this, because it leaves you scarred for quite a while. So there I was. It's 2010. I'm 19 years old and female, by the way. And I started working my first job at a local Subway that's just a couple of blocks away from my community college. I worked there Thursday to Sunday mornings and actually quite enjoyed my almost years of worth of employment. I made many friends and gained lots of customer service skills that I had a dire need of, since I was always a very shy girl growing up. One friend I met in particular was this really friendly man named Henry. He was a Vietnam veteran and always came every morning to pick up his coffee and breakfast sub before spending about an hour reading the newspaper and hanging out in the store. Henry even introduced me to his granddaughters that he would sometimes bring along with him, who would always say hello and want to give me hugs. Honestly, such a wonderful and cute experience. But unfortunately, I'm not here for that. You see, there was one early morning I was opening and I was already in a pretty bad mood as I had returned from a 3-day weekend, which saw me having a breakup with my then boyfriend. So you best believe I wasn't really in the greatest of moods. Anyways, about 20 minutes after opening and just before the rush, a homeless man stepped into the store and asked me if he could use the restroom. I sighed at his request because I knew I would have to tell him that it was for paying customers only. Most people scoffed it off and would pay the fee or go somewhere else. But this guy, just my luck, got mad and said that I needed to make an exception. After much talking and telling me how bad of a person I was for denying him, I finally caved in and said he could use the restroom this time only. Gosh, if only that was the end of my story right there. "Hey, what's the code again?" he asks me while signaling for me to come over and help. "It's 3478. It should work just fine." It was apparently, but I soon learned it wasn't because he wanted in. It's because he wanted something else. "Could you come over and help me? I really have to go." As a reminder, I'm the only one currently in this store, and I'm already starting to get really bad vibes off this dude. So wouldn't you know, I actually started to walk over to him, and I'm just within feet of the dude. All of a sudden, I hear the sound of the front door opening, and it's Henry and his 2 granddaughters, who instantly said hello. I made the mistake of turning my back on the creeper, and this is when I feel his tight grasp on my left arm. "What are you doing?" I say, as he pulls me in, but not before I manage to sock him right in the stomach, which causes him to let go. Henry dashes over to the homeless man, and then gets into a wrestling match with him. At a certain point, the creep actually tries to reach for a knife in his pocket, but Henry is able to disarm him and kick the knife away. Bear in mind, Henry's granddaughters are standing with me at the front of the store, and they're watching the whole thing unfold as I'm calling the cops on my phone. Thank the Lord, another customer showed up and was able to help Henry subdue the man until cops arrived. They arrested him, and luckily everything went back to normal just a short time later, but not of course before being left at a loss of words. To this day, I'm very thankful of Henry and his protective training and skills, because had he not shown up, I truly believe things would have gone south really quickly. Anyways, I remained really good friends with Henry and his granddaughters, but sadly I learned just a few months ago that Henry unfortunately passed of natural causes. To Henry, his family, and his grandkids, you are truly loved, and just know Big Henry is watching over every single one of you. So hold on to your loved ones tightly tonight and remind them of how much they mean to you. I hope you enjoyed hearing my story of Henry and the hero that he truly was. Let's face it, school can be hit or miss. There's days like when you have field trips, or there's those fun assemblies when you're having a good time. Then there are days when you're stuck in class having to write an essay, or fill out some dumb test hoping that whatever you studied for isn't somehow conveniently missing from your exam. Honestly, anyone out there have that issue where you study for hours on end, and then the information you jammed into your brain is nowhere to be seen? Ugh, So frustrating. Sorry, I digress. I wanted to spend a moment here to share a story that happened to me in middle school. So we're talking 2004-2005. Yes, I still remember this one because of how truly random and bizarre it was. So anyways, it's the 5-minute break in between our 5th and 6th period classes. And I'm waiting for my friend Josh, who was going to meet me in front of the restrooms, to lend me his copy of Pokemon Ruby, which I really wanted to play. By the way, since he was going to be leaving early that Friday to go to the dentist, this was the only time I was going to get it. Anyways, Josh still wasn't getting here, and I was getting antsy that the 5-minute bell was going to go off, and I would be late for my class. I remember I had a really strict teacher, and anytime somebody was late, even by a second, she would give you detention. Well, Josh did show up, and that final bell did go off, which made me think to myself, well, I guess I can think about which starter I'll get while I'm in detention. Just as Josh is about to leave, we notice 2 dudes dressed in all black and with ski masks over their face run in our direction, with one of them holding a duffel bag. Josh and I freak out and stood there like elk staring at a spotlight, as I remember one of them told us to move out of the way. We jump to the side, as moments later we can see about 5 police officers storm down the hallway, and other students are yelling and causing a scene. In short summary, the school went on lockdown, and after about 20 or so minutes, the all clear was given. Turns out the 2 had just robbed the local gas station across the street from our school and made off with about $3,000 worth of cash and scratcher tickets. Thank the Lord that even though one of them was armed with a knife, no student or teacher had to face the brute force of these 2 criminals. Oh, and by the way, this was one of the rare times when I didn't get detention, though I guess in those circumstances, it was pretty obvious. It's a chilly evening on a Friday in August, and of course I'm having a sleepover with my friends Gordy, Aiden, and Paul. We ended up going to a video store called Gone Hollywood, where we picked up cult classics like Halloween, Scream, and Good Burger, all on VHS. With our movies came time for food, so we had McDonald's and then went back to my house and swam in my big pool. After a while, we realized that we were running low on our favorite snacks, so I borrowed some money from my parents, and my friends and I walked 8 blocks toward a little convenience store called Shoppers. Mind you, it was midnight, and walking down those scary back lanes was pretty intense. Anyways, we go ham with the $100 we got, picking up food and snacks. It's at this time the bar next door is letting out its patrons, which most of them were pretty drunk. This is important to the story because some of them walked into the store and started to follow us back home after paying. Yes, you best believe we locked the doors and went straight to bed hoping we would never see those creeps again. Our wish would somewhat come true, because the next morning, cops ended up arresting those drunk guys who followed us home, which, crazy enough, they found them sleeping on our front porch, with knives and switchblades. Yeah, safe to say, our parents were fuming. Here's a story we covered on the Creepy Fox many years ago that I wanted to go ahead and remaster and re-record, since so many people have yet to watch and listen to my older narration videos. So here we go. First off, let me say I've been a fan since the beginning. Thank you for the hours of entertainment and help with the sleepless nights. This all happened 2 years ago. Thankfully, I journaled it all, so I remember the exact timeline. It was late spring when I finally got a couple of days off after an 8-day stretch of work. Naturally, I decided to head out to the wilderness for some early season hiking. I chose a particular hike I'd done once before. This was a 12-mile round trip to a secluded hot springs in the middle of a wilderness area. Now, this isn't the most technical hike around. The trail is a well-worn and maintained one, and obviously only 6 miles one way. Sounds easy enough, right? However, there is a considerable gain in elevation, and near the springs you must ford a large creek. but having completed the trip only 2 weeks prior, I was brimming with confidence for my endeavor. This was to be a quick in and out trip, with just enough daylight to soak a few hours in those beautiful geothermal pools. It was Thursday morning. I grabbed some supplies and a lunch to go, and hauled it to the trailhead. Honestly, besides my day pack supplies, I had a little bag of wine, and some of the grass, if you know what I mean, to calm my nerves. So with a swig and a smoke, I was off. Excited, I double-timed it up the trail. The path climbed high to the forested canyon side, following a roaring creek far below. This was Boulder Creek, the very torrent I was to cross later, but for now it was just a white ribbon rumbling far below me. This was the high country, so there was still snow on the north-facing slopes, even as the first wildflowers bloomed in the sun. After another few tokes and drinks, the trail began to descend to the creek bottom, and I recognized the crossing point. Now, out here, a creek could really pass for a small river. At the crossing point, the creek was easily a stone's throw across, and being May, it was choked with ice-cold runoff, and practically deafening with white water. Nevertheless, I sauntered up to a log jam, and that served as a bridge, and I started tiptoeing across. Over the deepest, fastest part of the creek, you have only one skinny log to cross on, and now with spring rain, it was nearly submerged. Put my arms out like I was walking a tightrope, and just went for it. That's when the scary incident occurred. I fell in. The following felt like an eternity, but likely only took a minute. I instantly sank to my neck and felt my right foot hit the stony creek floor as it wedged painfully between two boulders. With that, the current forced me under and pinned me to the bottom. In a moment of panic, I pulled my foot free as I felt flesh and bone give an unraveling rock. I scabbled out of there like a cat from a bathtub, and I looked at my foot. It was already swelling and throbbed with pain. Then I looked at my watch. 5 o'clock. Had it really gotten so late already? I took a quick assessment, and I couldn't put any weight on my right foot. It was likely broken. I was soaking wet, although luckily I still had all my supplies, including fire starting kit and a little food. I was a good mile from the spring still, and like I said, evening was upon me. It eventually dawned on me that I was spending the night out here. That being said, I decided to try to limp the rest of the way to the springs. At least I could stay warm and had a chance of meeting other hikers to send out a message. It got dark quick in that canyon, and before I knew it, I had lost the trail. Having no light, I knew I couldn't just stumble in the darkness. I had to stay put. I made a camp where I stood and started trying to build a fire. The wood was all soaking wet, as were my lighters. But somehow, after what felt like a million tries, I got the fire started. I took rocks I warmed in the fire and buried them under the dirt, then slept over that with a space blanket I had the foresight to bring. After finishing my wine, I finally felt warm enough to sleep, and I drifted off. I awoke shivering in the dark with rain pouring down some time later. I was so cold I couldn't think straight. I just wanted to sleep. I knew deep down that my body was shutting down from shock and hypothermia, but I was so tired, cold, and painfully miserable that I wanted only to drift off again. Then small thoughts came into my head. Thoughts of my friends coming to look for me, only to find my corpse. Thoughts of my mother crying as the coroner explained I passed with alcohol in my system. These thoughts spurred me to stay awake, which I did until dawn. Friday morning, I was up at dawn and discovered how agonizingly close I was to the hot springs the whole night. I immersed myself in the hot water, soaking my leg and drinking deep from the nearby creek. I was in and out of consciousness, and I just wanted to stay there forever. At 4 o'clock, I decided I had to get moving, as the alternative was a no call to work and a hefty search and rescue bill. By 5, I somehow managed to cross the Boulder Creek a second time, getting soaked in the process. I lit a quick fire on the opposite bank, dried off, and soldiered on. With 2 pulls I scavenged, I hiked the longest, slowest, most painful 6 miles of my life in the pouring rain, but I finally made it to the trailhead in my car by dark. I just sat with the heat on until my stupid cold fingers could even work and went home. Saturday morning, I limped into work and had a fun time explaining to my boss that no, I'm not still drunk. I'm in pain, and I'm late because I spent the night alone in the rain. One look at my leg was all the convincing he needed, and I went straight to the ER. All said and done, I had a broken metatarsal and some bad bruising, but nothing too serious. I became something of a local celebrity after that, as co-workers and customers alike had heard about the missing local up in Boulder Creek who walked home on his broken foot. But I wasn't proud. I was humble. The lessons weren't lost on me then, nor are they now. So, let's look at what I did wrong, shall we? Never hike alone. If I had a buddy with me, we could have crossed together and they could have gone for help. Number 2, always tell someone where you're going and when you'll return. I didn't. Had I been unable to escape under my own power, I would still be out there. But no one can find you if they don't know where to look. Number 3, don't drink when you hike. Seems obvious, huh? Well, save the wine for around the campfire or back at home. Number 4, be prepared. Scout's motto for a reason. I should have been outfitted with warmer clothes and more supplies. Thank goodness I had the space blanket and lighters. Number 5, respect Mother Nature. If you dance with Mother Nature, she'll always take the lead. My moment was right when I fell into the drink. Most people die on hikes from falls or drowning. I nearly did both because I wasn't paying attention during a critical moment, the creek crossing. With that, I bid you adieu. Learn from my mistakes, my friends. Thanks for listening. It's safe to say I'm not the only one who enjoys going to concerts and seeing their favorite artists play. This describes who I used to be up to about 7 years ago. Ever since I had this creepy experience, however, going to concerts is something I would rather avoid. Here's how things began. For some context, both my friend and I are female, and we were 19 when this happened. One day I was at a carnival and had been playing some of the games. At one point I ended up walking up to a booth, which was having a raffle. Some of the prizes included some PlayStations, Xbox consoles, and even tickets to see the band Boston. Kind of random, but I'm a casual fan of theirs and I know some of their hits. So I signed up for the raffle thinking, whatever, at least I try to win. I got an email the next week saying I had won 2 tickets to see Boston. Sweet. This, however, was just going to be the start of what would come. So Boston was playing at the Morongo Resort about an hour from where I lived. I take my friend Lexi with me, and soon enough we're all in line waiting to get inside the venue. While waiting in line, you saw people of all ages. You had the super fans that were probably all in their 50s and 60s, and you even had some families with their kids. Nice to know they introduced them to good music. Soon enough, the doors open, and we all start to make our way inside. These seats weren't reserved. It was pretty much up to whoever got there first. Luckily, we still got a good spot in the middle. Out of nowhere, this older man, probably in his 50s, bumps into me and grabs me for a second. It was weird, but I figured he had lost his balance. Sorry, I was just trying to get to the seat next to you. Excuse me. Whatever. It was an accident. So I thought. You see, by the way he talked, it seemed as if he had a little too much to drink that night. So we now wait for another 20 minutes while things are being set up on stage. The man next to us soon starts talking to Lexi and I. Hey there, the name's Ricardo. What's your name? Are the two of you huge fans of Boston? I've been listening to them since the 80s. By the way, how old are you two? Do you two have Facebook? It'd be nice to connect with fellow Boston fans. Lexi and I found it strange you would want that information, but we just told him our names thinking he wanted to start a friendly conversation. To be fair, Lexi didn't have Facebook. She was more into Tumblr and Twitter. I did have Facebook myself, but I wasn't going to tell this stranger I had one. After about 10 minutes, the lights went dim and the band stepped out on stage. The music is playing now and the crowd was going wild. But something fishy was going on. Now I'm not talking about the smell of the guy next to me. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see him scrolling on his phone and he was on Facebook. Wouldn't you know it, he actually ended up finding my profile as I could see him looking at my photos. Talk about creepy. But what I saw was he clicked on the picture I had taken with Lexi and then posted online. I tagged the location and he must have found it that way. I whispered towards Lexi and tell her about what the man was doing next to me. She also thought it was weird, and we both started to genuinely get creeped out by the entire thing. We decided to go ahead and move to the back of the room, at the cost of losing our seats. As we try to exit, he grabs my arm and almost causes me to lose my balance. "Wait, I sent you an invite on Facebook. Accept it, okay?" The people around me started to catch on, and he soon lets go of me. Well, instead of staying around, Lexi and I decided to leave. Maybe a little too much, but I was really mad that he had gone out of his way to ruin our night. It still wasn't over though. Lexi and I are now heading toward the exit of the building when we heard a familiar voice call out to us. "Hold on a minute. Don't tell me the two of you are leaving already." We turn around and, it's him again. Lexi and I quicken our pace as he begins to give chase. Luckily, we see a nearby security guard and tell them about the suspicious man. Well, do you want to know what he told them? He told them that he was our dad and that we had been acting up. Just scary because at first the security guard seemed to believe him. "Okay, sir, if these two are your daughters, what are their names?" Suddenly, the realization that we had told him our names hit us. He says, "Oh well duh, it's Lexi and Christine." Both Lexi and I are now telling the security guard what he had done while we were in the show. Thankfully, he finally gets the idea and tells the man to come with him to the back room for questioning. He wasn't having that, as he throws a fit. He grabs a nearby bottle and almost hits the guard right in the head, but the security guard suddenly goes into protective mode and tackles this guy down, football style. Moments later, another security guard joins us to usher this Ricardo guy away. That was pretty much it. Lexi and I go home, and we soon forget about it. Oh, and in case you're wondering, I ended up blocking him and never heard from him ever again. Back during my college years in the 80s, I used to work for a video rental store that was tied in with a small arcade. There were many evenings in which I had to close up alone, which wasn't a problem since the owner let me stay after hours to play video games. I'd say that made it all the worthwhile since I was, and still am, quite a night owl. There were a lot of friendly customers that I actually became really close friends with. Most of them would come visit me, and during my breaks we would have competitions playing Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, and all the other games on display. Now, that didn't mean we got some pretty interesting customers. There is one in particular I want to go ahead and tell you about. It sort of started by chance. I was at the grocery store with my boyfriend at the time, and this man walked up to me and told my boyfriend that he was pretty lucky to have someone like me. He introduced himself as Joshua, or something along those lines, and he was, from my best recollection, in his 40s, and I remember him being slightly overweight, a bit shorter than me. I was 5'7", and he was maybe about 5'5". He had acne on his face, glasses, and greasy long black hair in a ponytail. Anyways, a couple of days later, I'm working a night shift at the rental store, and the guy from the grocery store walked in. He came in with a face of, "Cool, just gonna rent a movie," which changed, oh my gosh, if it isn't the girl from the grocery store. Seriously, it's like all his attention was laser focused on me now, as he makes his way over to the counter. He tells me it was really nice to meet me the other day and goes on about how he's never seen me here before. I told him I just started working a few months ago, but was only here on the weekend since it conflicted with my college schedule. We talk for another 15 to 20 seconds as I respond with short answers, until I told him I needed to get back to work. Here's when the first indication of something being wrong occurs. I get interrupted by a customer who's with their 2 kids that are looking to rent some movies. I remember this Joshua guy telling me that the customer looking to rent the movie could wait, as he was being rude and interrupting the conversation we were having. I ignore Joshua as I help out the customer. Once I'm done, he tells me it was really rude to just ignore him, but I have to remind him I'm on the clock. He leaves, and the rest of the shift goes by uneventfully. Next day, I'm working in the morning, and guess who shows up? It's Josh, and he's got a bouquet of roses. "I'm really sorry about yesterday. You're just really beautiful, and I couldn't help myself. I brought you some roses to make it up to you." It was pretty awkward, and one look at my coworker Colton pretty much said it all. Even Colton told the man that this wasn't the time and place, and Joshua pretty much cussed him out. Joshua insisted I take the flowers, but I told him I wasn't feeling comfortable, reminding him that I had a boyfriend. Joshua grows furious as he proceeds to throw the roses at my coworker Colton's face. He then knocks over some of the popcorn and candy displays before storming out of the video rental store. Colton looked at me and jokingly said that I had a new secret admirer, but then he admitted it was pretty creepy to have some guy 20 years older than me bringing me flowers. Well, yeah, I was the one having to deal with him, not him. Anyways, I wish I could say that was the last time I would see Joshua, but it's not. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, Joshua would come into the store. However, instead of talking to me, he would just walk around for hours, pretending to be looking at renting movies. He didn't even play at any of the arcade machines. He would just sit at one of the benches, and I swear he was staring at me the whole time. I finally brought it up with my manager, and I told him I wasn't feeling comfortable working under the current circumstances. He told me he would take care of it, and one day he walked up to Joshua and told him he can't be loitering around since other customers might want to use the benches. Joshua then disappeared for about 3 months, and I finally thought the talk my manager had with him would be enough. That was until one evening I was closing with Colton. We had already escorted all the customers out of the building, and Colton had been in the back room using the restroom. I was in the process of locking the doors, but before I could make it to the front, I saw someone staring at me from one of the windows. I couldn't believe it, but standing out in the rain was Joshua, and worst of all, I could see him holding some sort of switchblade. I freaked out as I attempted locking the door, but he manages to place his hands on the door handles literally 2 seconds before I could put the key into the keyhole. I booked it toward the back room, just as Colton is walking out. "Colton, get inside and call the police, quick!" I shout, full of panic and fear, heart beating louder than my footsteps and sweat dropping down my brow. We both make it into the back room and slam the door, with the lock mechanism locking into place and indicating we were safe. Joshua begins to pound on the door while I'm just standing there trying to hold back tears. Colton tells Joshua we were calling the police, but I don't think he cared. He kept kicking and kicking at the door, demanding I come out and talk to him, and that nothing would happen to me if I listened. Obviously, that wasn't happening. Thankfully, the police get there just as Joshua is leaving, and they manage to arrest him with no further altercation. I ended up filing a restraining order shortly after the incident, and I'm happy to report I have never seen Joshua ever again. It was summer of 2005. I was 19 years old. I had no money and I was looking for a job. I tried applying at Target, Costco, Walmart, but no callbacks. It was really disappointing. Now, I was living at home and my parents bought me everything I wanted, but I really wanted to have responsibilities and have the satisfaction of earning my own money, not having it granted to me. One day, I stepped into a coffee shop I frequented and was having a conversation with the owner. One thing led to another, and he offered me a position as a barista. I was beyond excited, but to be honest, I knew nothing about coffee. That would change after a couple of weeks, and soon I was on my way to my first paycheck. I got paid weekly, and it was only about $200. Nothing crazy, but rewarding nonetheless. Things started off fun and exciting, until a couple of months later, I would have a very scary encounter. I was working the night shift with a fellow barista named Eric, and our little coffee shop was empty. It was 20 minutes before closing, and Eric tells me he was going into the back to do some cleaning. I tell him it's fine, and I started to rearrange some of our displays. I'm doing this for about 3 minutes, and for whatever reason I looked outside our window. That's where I saw someone in a ski mask walking back and forth, almost as if he was checking for something. I thought it was pretty bizarre, but I thought it must have been some bored teenagers. We get a lot of college students in the area, and a lot of times they'll goof around. What happens a couple of minutes later, however, was no laughing matter. A man in a ski mask armed with a revolver enters the store. Now I thought it was a joke, so I nervously laughed. This, however, didn't go well with this armed individual as he points the thing right at me, demands I open the cash register. Suddenly, that smirk on my face changes to absolute panic as I do as I'm told. I start to put what little money we have in our register, and while I'm doing this, Eric steps out with a tray of cookies. This dude literally fires a shot toward him, just barely missing him by a few inches. I'm pretty sure he just got scared because he didn't fire another one after that. I guess that's his reaction for seeing cookies, huh? Anyways, he demanded Eric stay where he was and try not to run to a phone or activate an alarm. After 45 or so seconds of absolute uncertainty, the man runs out of the store. Once he's gone, Eric and I run into the back room, where we lock ourselves in there and call the police. Unfortunately, the man got away that night, and after an investigation was launched, it came up empty-handed. It's been easily over 10 years since that happened, but I'll never forget the night our coffee shop was robbed. I worked as a receptionist for a somewhat popular hotel back from 2002 to 2004. While the job at a hotel might seem like your basic standard customer service, it does come with its fair share of scary people. Most issues revolve around customers not getting what they wanted, or as I like to call them, the dummies who can't read the rules that are on fine print. I have two stories I want to share. The first one is kind of scary, but the second one really put the icing on the cake. So here's that first incident. It had been a slightly slower day than average, as it was our off-season, and the Recreation Center was showing a marathon of movies for the guests that were staying at the hotel. The Recreation Hotel staff offered the guests a free sample of popcorn, which was basically this little cup. If the guest wanted more popcorn, they were able to come up to the receptionist desk, where I was, and purchase a bag of popcorn. We ended up implementing this system because a lot of popcorn went to waste, and management wasn't too happy about it, not that I could blame them. In any case, I was sitting there looking over some documentation on my computer, when in my peripheral vision, I see a man with a pretty angry expression coming up to me. I recognize the man. He had checked in just a couple of days ago with his family, and I already knew he was going to be a troublemaker. He was one of those dads that if he didn't get it his way, he would get into an angry rant. "Hello, sir, can I help you with something?" He starts to curse at me and says the hotel employee he was talking to was being very rude to him, and didn't give him any more popcorn when he asked. Remember how I said people don't read the fine print? "I'm really sorry, sir, but unfortunately those are just sample-sized popcorns. You're gonna have to actually buy a bag if you want more." He grows even more angrier, telling me how the customer is always right, and that if we really cared, we would give him free popcorn. "Can't you just let it slide this once and give me a free bag of popcorn?" "Absolutely not," I rebutted, telling him that if I were to give him a free sample, the next family would want the same thing, thus creating this never-ending loop of free popcorn, until we're all out. Boy, let me tell you, it's like something snapped in his head. He basically told me that I was going to be sorry, and that he was going to come after me and my family. My manager just so happened to have walked into the front lobby when the man said this, and told the man he needs to leave. Mr. Crazy Dad actually attempts to punch my manager, but my manager did something pretty cool. I didn't know it at the time, but my manager used to be in the Marines. He made an absolute embarrassment out of this dad, as I called for security and they escorted him and his family away. We never did see him again. But wait, that's not the end of my submission. Remember how I told you another creepy story was waiting for you? Here it is. It was another slow evening and it was just myself and one other receptionist. The time was roughly 8:45 p.m. and we're just talking and wasting time. My coworker was going to be clocking out in 15 minutes and they would soon be leaving, until it was the end of my shift. While we talked about football or something along those lines, we get a phone call. I went ahead and answered, seeing as I would save my coworker the trouble. "Hello, thank you for calling. This is Erica speaking. How may I help you?" At first I didn't hear anything. I repeat my spiel, and then finally a man in a deep, creepy voice speaks up. "Hey baby, are you alone right now? You're really smoking, you know that?" I handed the phone to my coworker, who is male by the way, and I whispered there was some creepy dude calling. "Hello, can I help you with something?" my coworker said in the most manliest voice he could muster. My coworker told me that the man cursed him out, and then hung up the call. I told him what he had said to me, and we explained it as just a prank call. It happened every once in a while anyways. Fast forward about an hour later. I'm by myself, and I'm just sitting at my chair watching the TV that's in our front lobby. This is when I get interrupted by another phone call. "Hello, thank you for calling. This is Erica speaking. How may I assist you?" What I hear on the other side of the call made the previous one look like child's play. "I see you're all by yourself, Erica. It would be a shame if something happened to you." That's what I can more or less remember him saying. I hung up the phone, and then like 20 seconds later, this scruffy, disheveled 40-something-year-old man walks into the front lobby. He had a heavy-set jacket, jeans with holes in them, and military boots. His beard reminded me of something you would see in one of those hunting shows. So I stood there nervously as he sat down at one of the lobby tables and just stared at me. I had a suspicion he was the one who called me, but I couldn't really prove it. So I went ahead and called for my manager, who was in the back office, and I explained that I was feeling uncomfortable because of a guest. Again, not trying to assume, but I wanted to be safe than sorry. The man must have overheard I was planning backup because he comes up to the front counter and then starts to ask me if I could show him where the restrooms were. I was trying desperately to stall for time, but then he points to a sign that's behind me that says, "We aren't allowed to deny the request of a guest." It's such a dumb rule, but the heck with politeness. I tell him to wait for my manager, and then he does and says something that to this day, I will never forget. The dude reaches into his boot and pulls out a switchblade. He then says, "Did I stutter? Show me where the restrooms are, and I promise to go easy on you." He wanted to have his way, and the restroom would be his so-called room. Still no sign of my manager. I was too scared to run because I felt as if he was going to catch me. I guess he would either have to run around to the other side of the front receptionist desk, or even jump around to get to me, which I guess did give me plenty of time to dodge him. But here's something to note. Why no guests were out and about was beyond me. Normally there's at least one, but nothing this evening. Luckily I catch a break when, just like the previous encounter I mentioned, my manager shows up. This guy puts the switchblade back into his pocket as my manager comes up to him and asks what the issue was. Suddenly his expression changes to one of innocent. He tells my manager he was my uncle and he had come to check up on me. My manager looks at me and then back to this man and tells him he needs to leave or he was going to call authorities. Thank God that was enough to scare him away, and he never returned back to the hotel again. Edit. We handed security footage over to the police, but they were never able to locate that man. I quit just a few months after that, and I moved out of the city back into the countryside with my mom and my dad. Hello, creepy fox. Before I start, I'm not going to say where I live, nor my name, so you can just call me B. Anyways, here's a story from when I was younger. Me and my BFF, aka cousin who we can call Sandy, are very close and we usually have sleepovers every week or two, and usually at her house, so I went over like normal. We did things here and there in the daytime, but that's not really too important for my retelling. The sun was gonna set soon, so we went to the park. We went there in the day, so we went back. The park was behind her house and she introduced me to some of the other kids that she played with. I'm not going to use their real names, so we're going to call them Emma, Alex, and Lizzie. I was the third oldest and Sandy was the fourth oldest. We're very close in age. A little after playing, we saw this black old truck drive by, and we thought nothing of it because the park was right next to a road and a basketball court. But next to the court was another road that was more of a busy one. A small detail, but one I like to bring up for a reason. Moving on. We continued to play, and about 6 minutes later, we saw the same car on the opposite side because we like to watch the cars go by. All of us thought they went on the wrong road, so we think, whatever. 10 more minutes pass and I heard something like a car. My hearing is pretty good when I want to focus on something, so I look, and guess what? The same truck is on the road closest to the park. The younger ones, Sandy and Emma, were getting a little scared, so myself, Alex, and Lizzie wanted to cheer them up, so we started to play Sandman. Yet another 10 minutes later, we saw the truck on the other side, so all of us agreed we would run for it if we spotted it again. At this time, it was about 8:30 p.m., so myself and Sandy would have to go soon anyways. Now, fast forward to us being in our neighborhoods and out of the park, and I remember saying, "Do you guys hear that?" We looked behind us and a few houses down, and we saw the black truck parked on the street from the park, and everyone pretty much booked it to their houses. Sandy and I were running when I decided to look back halfway to her house, and I saw someone looking at us from the side of a house. But Sandy didn't see them, which is a good thing, or else she would have been more scared than she normally was. After I saw this creepy stranger, Sandy grabbed me by the hand and started pulling me away. She still doesn't know to this day that I saw someone from the truck hiding and looking at us from behind a house. Talk about a creepy scenario.